Every year, we set goals for ourselves. We sort of revisit the idea of dreaming big. We have this, 12-month blank canvas that we doodle all over. And oftentimes at the beginning of the year, those doodles are big. We're aiming high. We're thinking big. We're giving ourselves the opportunity to dream because all that blank space on the calendar in front of us feels like a lot of time. What I have found often in my own life and when I look around and talk to friends and people that I work with, I see time and time again that as the year goes on, we tend to kind of scratch out those big doodles and draw them in a smaller way. Or this is what I'm going to do this year. And we say, well, half of that is good, or maybe 25% of the way is still progress. And I get that. I tend to set really kind of almost unachievable goals. And I have learned to rein that in a little bit because it almost has gotten me to a point where I expect not to meet my goals. And I think that then just opens the door for us to think smaller and smaller. My guest today is Kristin Sweeting. And if you don't know her after today, I have no doubt that you're going to want to go listen to her podcast and tune into what she is teaching because she does such a great job helping us continue to dream big and to execute on those big dreams in a way that is doable, in a way that sort of pulls us out of the thinking small mindset and gives us a little more expansion. And I wanted to bring her on the show here at the beginning of the year because I felt like it was such a great time as we are thinking big thoughts and aiming high to put some brass tacks to that and to really figure out what our plan is going to be, not only for dreaming those things, but achieving them. So I will go ahead and cue the music and we can dive in with Kristin.
Welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. My name is Anami Tonkin, and I help photographers run profitable, sustainable businesses that they love. Each week on the podcast, I cover simple, actionable strategies and systems that photographers at every level of experience can use to earn more money in a more sustainable way. Running a photography business doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it, and I can show you how.
Kristin Sweeting, welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. I am so excited to have you on the show, and I am so excited for this conversation that we're going to have today. It is like my favorite time of year to sit and sort of sketch out the big ideas and figure out how I'm going to work toward those. And you are kind of the queen of this. So I know today's conversation is going to be a juicy one. Why don't you start by, introducing yourself for anyone who happens not to know who you are, and we'll just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for having me. I love this conversation, and I love everything you do, so I appreciate it so much.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I'm Kristin Sweeting. I've been a wedding photographer for 14 plus years, and life coach, something like that. I don't know. I don't even use those words for 8 or 9 years. And I just love helping. I love helping people design their business and their life in a way that's supportive of their health and their relationships and their bigger goals instead of kind of rebuilding ourselves into the box that maybe we were trying to get when we left our normal job. I think it's very natural to do that. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee with my son who's 8 years old and my husband, Andrew, and we're just out here having a great time.
That's amazing. I love how what you teach is really reflected in how you live your life and how you run your business. I feel like it's so easy to find examples of people out there who are sort of preaching one thing and then doing something totally different. And you're a real inspiration for that. So it is great. And I feel like that's exactly the source you want to go to when you are looking to set goals and design a life and a business that suits your needs. Because as entrepreneurs, there's no reason to run a business if you're not running a business that you love and that really supports the life that you want as well. Let's just kind of start, you do a lot of talking about business and life design. So let's just sort of dive right into when you are doing that, when you're designing and dreaming and scheming about, your big goals and things. Where do you start? Do you start kind of with your business and work toward your life, like in that order? Do you start with like, this is the life I want and here's my business? Like, how does that work?
I definitely think there's seasons for both. I tend to start with life first and build the business second, because I think that it informs how we want to work, how much we want to work, what we need to price our work at, all of those things. And when I started doing this, it was kind of out of necessity. I developed an autoimmune disease really early in my 20s because I was stressed and I was doing like chronic people pleasing, which tends to put us in these cycles where we're overworking and we're showing up in ways that aren't as healthy. And so I really had to be like, hey, let's look at my energy, look at what I want to do with my family, what goals I have for myself as a person, and how can I let my business be the way that I accomplish those. So I always think it's great to start with like what we each really value, which is going to be different person to person. So I'm a big fan of doing a core values exercise first to kind of get really clear on what's important to you as a person, or really important in this season. Maybe you have small kids, or you want to find a partner, or there's some other thing that's kind of a driving force in your life. And then making a lot of those business goals second after you're really clear on those things.
So you kind of mentioned when we first started talking about, a lot of people come from other careers, right? Not everybody starts doing this straight out of, school. So I think that it can be hard to kind of unwire some of those prescribed goals, prescribed dreams and aspirations and things like that whether they come from our former career path or whether they come from sort of family expectations or societal expectations. How do you help people really drill down on what their values and their goals are? Because I have found that challenging at times, because it's like, I hope that I've gotten a little bit away from that people pleaser thing, but it was a big part of my life for a long time. And it really informed what a lot of my goals were all the way into my probably mid-30s.
Yeah, I think that's super normal. And a lot of times when someone comes to me to do this kind of work and I'm like, what are your goals? I feel like the first thing people say is like, it's a revenue number, or it's a, like, I need to do this many weddings or shoots, or I need to buy a house, or whatever it is. Like, a lot of it is kind of what is put on us from societal expectations. So I always ask these questions, which is, it's a little bit like, get your journal out. Let's think a little bit here. But I always ask, what are some of the moments where you remember feeling really fulfilled? Or what are some of the moments where you remember feeling really proud? And kind of digging a little bit, like asking the right questions, digging into personal memories, maybe something in high school, like, oh my gosh, I starred in this play, or I was a supporting role in this play, and I walked off that stage and I was like glowing. I was so excited about what I had accomplished, and I felt so proud that I had memorized all those lines and sang those songs. And now we're looking at an adult 20 years later who has no aspect of creativity in their life, no aspect of performing in their life. And so maybe we can start taking like steps towards having more of those things. Also, I think looking at personal life and professional life. I was really sick, in my 20s, and I was like, I want to run a marathon. I don't know. I'm not a good runner. I'm not a naturally good runner. I don't care how fast I do it. It's just like, I want to complete it. And so a lot of my core about like when I was starting to think about what I felt really proud of, ran the slowest marathon of all time. I cried the last 6 miles. Like I literally did. I was just like, I walked and my partner came and walked next to me and I just like sobbed. But I finished the race.
Amazing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is like I did something I didn't think was possible. And So some amount of challenge, growth is always going to be something in my life. Like I want to learn new languages and I want to run in races. I want to try new business goals because to me, working towards it is fun. And so that's a core value. So I think some of that introspection and taking some of these questions and journaling on them can help kind of point you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's such a great exercise to look backward and think about times when we were sort of unabashedly proud of an accomplishment or just like basked in that sort of glow. Yeah, that glowy feeling of having done something that you're really proud of. Because if you can tap into what the core source, maybe you don't necessarily need to go out and act in another play now. Maybe that's not serving you where you are right now. But maybe like starting to do some speaking or something like that performative part of your creative being. That I love that. Okay, so once you do that exercise and you're sort of like, okay, these are the things that fill me up. These are the things that I want to add into my life and maybe do some thought process about what we want to cut out of our lives as well. But once you kind of have those more defined, then what? Like what's the next step after you've got those on some sort of, place where you can see them and think about them?
Yeah. I love doing kind of a big brainstorm or brain dump. And I think a lot of times too, trying to find sources of inspiration of people that are doing life differently. I was really inspired by Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. I just listened to it a lot because at the time that I read it and listened to it, it was like we work Monday through Friday. We're going to work till we're 65. We're going to retire then and hopefully have enough money by then. And so the whole goal is just like wake up, do the thing, make the money, save it for the future, that kind of thing. And so I think not only brainstorming within those different core values, some things, because sometimes we don't even know where to start. We're like, I value connection.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh,
right.
What do I do with that? And thinking like, what would be amazing to do with a friend? What would be amazing to do with your family? What are you seeing other people do? Even if it's just a random person on the internet that you're like, ooh, that looks fun. Or, ooh, I feel kind of jealous of that. Or I'm a little judgmental of that person for doing something differently. We can start kind of noticing our own patterns of when someone or something is eliciting an emotional reaction from us and just start taking notes. It doesn't mean like, oh, I see that family that's traveling the world, I need to do that. But you might be like, hey, that kind of made me judgmental or made me jealous. And I'm going to write it down because maybe I do really want to take my son on a trip. Maybe I do really want to go with my mom and see the Northern Lights or whatever, So I think it's the both. It's brainstorming, but also looking outside of the current bubble that we're in to say, are there people doing things differently? And does it have to look the way that I think it has to look?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is a funny truth that sometimes when you see somebody doing something and your immediate thought is like, that's ridiculous. They shouldn't be, fill in the blank, or what a selfish thing for that person to do. It's almost the things that bring those feelings up for us. Often it's like if you dig a little deeper, it's something that deep down you either aspire to or have some like, I could never do that, but I really would like to. So yeah, that's a...
Yeah. I think the phrase too, like, must be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
Like, and I know we say it sarcastically now, but there's always a little bit of truth to it. We're like, oh, must be nice. That person that's doing that thing.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
Good for you. And I think what we do when we say that is we're like, other people can have that dream life, but we can't.
But I can't, right?
Yeah. Like, I can't. They can for XYZ reason. And usually there's some shame, some guilt, some old story that maybe isn't serving us anymore that we're clinging really tightly to. Because, it makes us feel safe. Like, It makes us feel safe to not think outside of the kind of four walls that we feel comfortable in. And so judgment and jealousy and things like that confirm our place in this safety zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it totally makes sense why we do that. And I see that as like, I get curious when I'm jealous of someone. Yeah. I'm like, why did I judge them for doing that or wanting that? And is there something that I need to like pay more attention to in myself?
I live, as we were talking about before we hit record, with a 14-year-old, and man, oh man, middle school is no joke for, judgment and jealousy and all this other stuff. And Judah will come home sometimes and complain about, they're all gossiping about me about this. And, or he'll start to, like make fun of somebody at the dinner table or something. And I have recently really gotten to where I'm hammering on him, like, look, I want you to pay attention to the things that people are making fun of and the things that you feel like you want to make fun of. It's the same thing. It's just on a less self-aware level. But we all have that. We all come from that. And we really do have to be intentional about paying attention to it. But I love that you can then flip that around and not just use it to like beat yourself up for judging people, but use it to tap into what those kind of goals and values are. So smart.
Yeah. And it's part of the creative process too. I think especially if you're a photographer or running a creative business, you're like, oh yeah, I'm creative, but we don't let it also reflect in our own life. And I think photographers are really guilty of this because we love making other people happy. We love capturing other people's lives. And I've talked to so many photographers that are like, I'm not creating memories with my own family. Mm-hmm. I'm not prioritizing my own beautiful story that I'm living. Like, I'm just giving it to other people. And I think we really have to be self-aware and watch that, because this is the only life we have too,
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And that phrase exactly, the like, this is my one life, has brought me through a lot of like hard times and helped me make a lot of hard decisions. All right. So you've got your goals, you've got your vision. Now it's time to like figure out the brass tacks part of it. Like, how are we going to make this happen? Do you have a formula for that? Because that to me is really where the rubber meets the road.
So, I mean, you've done this big brainstorm, so I'll just give some random examples. I'm like, oh my gosh, I saw this person take a month off. Must be nice. And then I like take the must be nice out. I'm like, how could I make that happen for me? I took a month off when I was broke, like I did this at all different stages in my financial journey too. It's just intentionality. So I think we have to first admit that we want something. So we're like, okay, the month off, or okay, the trip to XYZ place, or the paid off house, or whatever it is. And then we really can reverse engineer it, or look at more than just the one way of receiving something. So I'm like, hey, I want to live in Paris for a month. Let's just like say everyone wants to live in Paris for a month, right? And so I could be like, oh, must be nice. I can do that when I'm a millionaire. Or I can do that when I have so much coming in, or this thing happening. Instead of looking at it and being like, are there other ways I could problem solve for this thing? We don't just have financial resources. Sometimes we have friends or connections or people that want to hire us in a different place, or a nonprofit that needs volunteers, or, someone that is subleasing or needs a pet sitter. You know what I mean? Is like, we get so narrow in our options. So I usually recommend building out a budget, like doing the whole look up how much it would be, look up all the activities you'd want to do, figure out what that costs, and then kind of build it into your business of, all right, that means booking 2 extra portrait sessions or 1 extra wedding or whatever. But I also encourage people to think through their non-financial resources too. I've gotten trips because I pitched to a company to do some Instagram photos for them. We have skills, we have relationships, we have other resources that often we don't consider. And so then I also say, like, make a list of 5 different ways you could get to that in maybe a non-financial way, or like less of a financial way. Because then it's just what you're doing is you're opening up the synapses in your brain to be like problem solving and looking for these things to come to you through all these different paths. You could fall in love while you're traveling with like a guy that lives there, and then all of a sudden you have an apartment there. There's
right.
a limit.
Right.
these things.
Yeah. There was a book that I read years ago, and I can't think of what the name of it was. So it was a book about like being your own best advocate when it comes to like navigating the healthcare system. So it was talking about how physicians are trained, they are like hardwired to see someone and make a quick diagnosis based on whatever constellation of symptoms that they have. And as soon as their brain kind of takes them down that path, it shuts off the other mental sort of pathways that could lead to other diagnoses, because that is the way that this is not just physicians, we are all like this. Once we sort of figure something out, in order to preserve brain capacity, we are like, okay, this is the way to do that. What you're suggesting really is like what he was suggesting in this book, which is what can be great, but it can also get in your way. So if you're thinking like, I want to go spend a month in Paris, so I need $10,000 extra to magically appear in my bank account, what if instead of that, or sort of in combination with that, let's problem solve this a different way. So I love the idea of backing that out and saying, okay, what else? What else could I do? That was his solution to this problem. Is if your doctor is saying one thing and you're like, I don't think it's that, ask what else, if it wasn't that, what else could it be? Which just kind of jars that medical professional into like, oh, well, let's think. Maybe it could be this, this, and this. Oh, yeah, let's run that blood test. So I love applying that into the fun stuff and not just the healthcare.
Exactly. That's such a good example of this way of thinking of, we go, oh, well, I don't have this much money, so I can't.
Right.
Or, oh, I don't have enough time. Usually our limiting beliefs come back to time and money.
Time and money, always, yeah.
I don't have enough time, so I can't, And when we take away those two things and we're like, but what if I did? What if I did have enough money? What if I did have enough time? Or what if those weren't factors in this decision? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, we can start thinking so much differently and problem solving in a different way. And I think you'll find that that thinking comes into play in so many areas of life. Like I just had a client the other day who was like, I have a young son. He's only in daycare from this time to this time. I don't have enough time to do this thing that I want to build my business the way I want. And instead of stopping there, I was like, well, okay, we need to get you one full day of work. Could we find a babysitter? Mm-hmm. Could we find have your husband pick him up from school that day? And we went through all these different options. And then I was like, have you asked if your daycare would let him come for one full day if you keep him home on another day? Then you could have the full day with him that you want, mm-hmm. and you have the full work day that you want. And she was like, I had not even thought to ask that question.
Right.
Ask the question. They were like, totally. They solved the problem. And then now she has a much more ideal work week.
Work setup, right. Of course. Oh, that's so good.
I think sometimes we don't even see the other options in front of us.
Yeah, it is. It's a forest for the trees kind of a thing. And making that sort of intentional space to pause, back up, and say, what am I missing here is so good. It's not to not to overlook the importance of talking it out with other people, because I do think that we get super stuck in our heads when we are up close on something.
Totally. Yeah, having that other perspective. And I think that's what in this dream life building, life design building thing that I've learned is, if you're like, okay, what if we don't have to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? What if we took away Friday? What if we did less time? And I think people are finally starting to do that even in corporate settings, and finding people are more productive and more happy, right, and finding all these things. So I'm all about following those little hints of that glowy feeling and kind of questioning our own assumptions. And I think that those two things really will help us get closer to a life that's fulfilling and supportive of our whole personhood,
Yeah. So the last piece that I want to touch on is the piece that I think for a lot of people is the hardest, because we can all say if there's time and money, every single person has the same number of hours in the day, same number of, days in the year. So that does feel like a level playing field, and I can sort of get past that. But the money piece, it's like, well, if I had more money, this would be easier. And that may be true for a lot of things. Like we'd all love to have some sort of major windfall. But when it comes down to, you've optimized your dream trip to the extent that you have been able to figure out in terms of getting somebody to hire you while you're there, and it's a write-off and it's this. So we've shrunken the number, the bottom line thing, but there is that price tag attached to most things. So in our businesses, how do we then kind of go about achieving those financial goals?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this has been so helpful in my pricing journey too, because if you're starting with the lifestyle and you're saying, Anami, I want to take off 1 month in the summer because my kids are home from school, so I'm going to block off July. Mm-hmm. I want to work 4 days a week, so I need to block off some weekdays. So if I'm working on a weekend, I can have other weekdays. And I need to make, 100,000, 200,000, whatever the number is to pay for the things that I've built in this lifestyle. You really can work backwards and be like, okay, how many weddings at what price does that mean? Mm-hmm. How many portrait shoots at what price? Or maybe I do a little of both. And I'm like, that would mean, 50 portrait shoots at this price. I just have to keep them within these months and these days, these boundaries that I've set for myself. Or that's 10 weddings at 10,000 or whatever it is. And so even if you're like, well, right now I charge 2,000 for a wedding. So how am I going to get there? How am I going to close that gap? It at least gives us something to aim for. And I remember doing this the first time in my own business. And I looked at my expenses and I looked at, I was single parenting and I was like, I've got 2 days a week to work, like this reality is not fun, but this is what it is. So I need to figure it out. And the number at the time was I have to charge at least 5,000 or I'm losing money and I won't be able to sustain this basic life, And that just really that gave me so much more confidence when I was pitching my work, when I was pitching my pricing, is to have that voice in the head that was said you actually can't do this if you're not charging this.
Right.
And so then I didn't feel as guilty. Well, yeah, I didn't feel as guilty asking for it as I was getting used to that number. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like I had to apologize for it or anything like that. So I think that information is so helpful where even if I'm building my business, I can look at you and be like, I really need to be charging 10,000 per wedding to make this sustainable. So I got to figure it out in the next couple years.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I mean, again, there's problem solving. It might look like a part-time job for a while you're waiting to attract that new ideal client. It might mean doing some other types of photography in the background or having another income stream. I got really creative in that season. I rented out my house for photo shoots. Mm-hmm. I had a retainer client. I did boring photography work at a bank,
Yep.
But I was like, I need to charge this amount for my weddings. And so I have to stay strong with that. A lot of love and you got this. Those numbers really will help you feel so steadfast in what you need to do once it all makes sense why you're doing it.
I just want to take a moment to underline that. I, help people run their numbers all the time. And so, it's got to be 75 to 80% of the time when somebody deep dives on those numbers and sort of sees what comes out the other side, there's that moment of panic or that moment of this isn't possible. And the people who are successful are the ones who say, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. And they stick to that. And that's a number that they came up with based on their priorities, their goals, their, needs, whatever. They put that down, they circle it, they say, I'm not going to take work for less than this. And if that means, I love that you brought up a part-time job, if that means that I have to hustle on some other thing to sort of wait until I can find my way into that niche or that market, it takes time. And more than anything, it takes believing in yourself and believing in those dreams. But man, the payoff is so good. It's so great. Your story, as I said, is one that I have found really inspirational. In many ways, it mimics my own in terms of single parenting and all of these things that could have meant saying, you know what, I can't do this or it's not possible. And so hopefully, having as many examples like you out there are, I just think it's a wonderful thing and a huge benefit. So Kristin, thank you so much for this conversation. Tell everyone, I know that if they don't already follow you and listen to your podcast, they're going to want to. So let everybody know where they can find you.
You can find me at the Dangerous Creatives podcast. If you love this podcast, I think you'll love our podcast.
It is
we
so
have
good.
a really lovely community, just like you do, Anami. And then we have a freebie. It's a vision board template. I use this thing religiously. I have a drawer full of vision boards that have come true, and I think that it's just like a fun practice. So that would be a fun download if you want it. But yeah, we're just so thankful that you let us come on and that we got to have this conversation. And I feel like we align in so many things. So it's always fun to just make that connection.
Absolutely. And I am dying to go peek at this vision board template. So where can they get that?
dangerschool.com/freebies. It would be
Awesome.
on there.
All right. Well, Kristin, again, thank you so much. I can't wait to have you back on the show, but I hope that this year is one of your best yet. And I appreciate the help that you're giving to everyone to make this year their best year.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can't wait to be back. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing year too.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of This Can't Be That Hard. I'll be back same time, same place next week. In the meantime, you can find more information about this episode, along with all the relevant links, notes, and downloads at thiscan'tbethathard.com/learn. If you like the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Even better, share the love by leaving a review in iTunes. And as always, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week.